I just wanted to point out in Obsidian, that's something that you would want to learn on. The results of your actions are visible immediately, whereas on this, you hit it, it might not break off the piece you want. You might not see the fractures that are in there. On Obsidian, it's like working next to water. You know what I'm saying? It's like it responds like water practically. And in this piece of Obsidian that I have, there's an actual perfect Hertzian cone that you can see in there. I will tell you that I did that on purpose, and you can believe me if you want. But that's the cone that I'm talking about. The annoying lady with the glasses in the second row that I was talking about, I'm just kidding. She asked a very good question about the cone and the flake. Could you ask it again?
That bigger flake that he knocked off, I thought it belonged to the top picture he drew, where he drew the red line and a little flake off to the left, and the rest of the cone went into the stone. I thought I was wrong.
So to clarify that, when I take a flake off, this flake, it was the very edge of that cone. If you didn't understand that, the rest of that cone is going off into thin air. The energy of that cone is going off to thin air. The cone, I always like to make this cone with my fingers, and I will put it on my stone, and depending on where I move the stone is going to depend on where that angle is. Here's the tip of the cone. So all of that other 80% of the cone is going off into space. All right? Right. Really important to understand. You're just using one edge of this cone. If you were to hit it directly in, that's what you get inside your stone, and that is not doing you any good, because when you get to this point of inside here, say you work around and you get in there, all of a sudden the rock falls apart and you got this thing in there. That's not how this happened. I did this on purpose. But that's what happens. You find that in the middle of your rock. And you can actually see the conchoidal fractures on that. I mean, it's really cool. I've been trying to do this for years, and finally one day I did it. Yep. So this is what I was talking about with the bigger rocks. And this way you can kind of get up on top of them and smash it, and your fingers. When you're doing it this way, it's good to wear gloves, because if you miss, done it. I've done a lot of dumb things. Have anyone seen Idiocracy? It's what plants crave. So now I should theoretically be able to get a better spall off of here. Now, my platform, here's my less than 90 degree angle. People were having trouble seeing this inside because of the light. So less than 90 degree angle. Here's my platform, the surface that I'm going to hit it on. This is my big bulbous ridge. I'm going to try and take this off, okay? Will it happen? I don't know. I don't know if my hammerstone's big enough. This doesn't feel 3 times, 4 times heavier than the flake, but I'm going to try and make up with it with power. Right. Your convex surface or ridge is going to be on the surface where the flake is being removed. So I'm striking right here. My force is coming down like this, pretty much straight down. And then the cone is going to go like this. So the edge of my cone I'm trying to send through the surface of the rock right there. And hopefully I prepped it good enough. There's a story that Tom tells when he was a kid and learning how to flint knap. Grandfather handed him a rock and he hit it. And it didn't break. And then or grandfather hit the rock. I don't really remember the story exactly, but grandfather hit the rock, handed it to Tom. Tom hit the rock. It didn't break. Then Rick hit the rock, and the rock broke. And he said, who broke the rock? And Rick or Tom or whoever broke it said, I did. And he said, no, we all did. Because if you hit it and it doesn't break, as long as you hit it at the same angle and in the same place, you're going to slowly work it off. It's not going to be the prettiest small, but it will come off. So hopefully I can do this in one strike. I don't do this enough. Got all these rocks in my shed, and I never do anything with them. Hey, Mike, would you put your foot on here? Just right here. I'm scared. Keep kicking it. I'm formulating a connection with the rock, okay? So I want this to work. All right. Oh, the other thing is your strike, if your ridge is going off this way and your strike is coming in this way, that's not good. You want to line your ridge up with your arm and the direction of your motion the best you can, okay? So if my ridge is lined up with this, or with my arm in the motion. All right, so there you go. It took that off. It did exactly what I wanted to do. Thank you. So there you go. That's a perfect example of ridge, spall, platform. All right. So I want to cover a couple more different things about stone working. This is not the only way to make stone tools. There are a couple different other ways. Are there any interns or volunteers around? Can you find me a couple quartzite pebbles, for the bipolar? Like this size,
sure.
Ovalish.
Sure.
They're probably there might be some over there or around the pump.
Okay.
Yeah. One technique of stone tool making is pecking. The celts and adzes and things that you can find out of greenstone and basalts, they are taken out of the riverbeds, and they are roughly flaked into shape. They're usually really, really hard stones, not real easy to nap, and they'll take off some flakes to give it a shape, and then they will peck them down into shape. And then they will grind them on another coarse rock like a piece of sandstone and abrade. Okay? Pecking and abrading. Your pecker needs to be harder than the stone that you are pecking. My pecker needs to be harder than the stone that I'm pecking. Thank you. Well, sandstone, when you're braiding, the pecker's harder so that it chips away the basalt or whatever, the greenstone. The abrading is, I use sandstone. There's sandstone here. I got a great piece of Pine Barren sandstone. I got a great piece of something from Arkansas that was on a train and they dumped it off. But the sandstone wears off, but it turns into sandpaper, like fine grit sandpaper, and it actually will you can see the edge I got on here with a sandstone rock. And this is basically a little mini celt that I've used to chop trees down. This was a gift from the Beaver people It was my throwing stick. And then I made one of these, and I was like, wow, I need a handle. And I was sitting around going like, what do I got? I need a handle. Where am I going to get a handle? And I was like, hey. So I put a hole in it and made a handle. So now it's a multi-purpose tool. I can be chopping down a tree and hunting at the same time, So that's basically one of the other methods of stone tool making, pecking and abrading. Okay? You may have seen like grooved axes. That's how they did it. Just sitting there pecking and pecking and pecking. And it's a lot of fun. It's actually very meditative, and it is you just make really great stuff out of it. And my favorite is when you have it all pecked out, and it's like really rough and pecked out back here, but then really smooth here. It just looks, just so sweet. Then there is the most primitive, called bashing. That is the most primitive technique. The easiest way to get a sharp edge is find a rock, find a bigger rock, and just throw it into it and close your eyes and hope for the best. Bashing. Okay? I do kids programs. I took a bunch of Montessori kids out for their study of early man. For 5 weeks, I took them out 1 day a week, and we went out and pretended that we were early man, and we made all of our stuff, and they had the most fun they had was bashing. And they could have spent 4 hours bashing rocks. I mean, it's funner than smashing bottles. So, and that's literally smash and grab. You're going to get a flake. It's just like that anvil technique that I showed you, but, I'm so mad. Well, it doesn't work on asphalt, though.
With small rocks.
Right. Exactly. So, another technique for getting your sharp edge is called bipolar percussion. Bipolar percussion is basically what you need for it is an anvil stone, a larger stone than the one that you're trying to remove your flakes off of, and you need a hammer stone. And basically the way that works is you get quartzite cobbles that are as ovally egg-shaped as possible with convex surfaces all the way around. And you have a hammer stone, and you basically take and you put your small little cobble on top of, and this is always fun. Will you hold this? Do you trust me? I don't. And bipolar percussion is basically this. All right? You got all different types of angles. You will find a perfect bipolar percussion. You will have a rock, I'm not saying this size, but it'll have a flake remove off on one side and a flake remove off on the other side, and then you will have a cobble that has the scar, flake scar in there. And you will find those all day long in creek beds. Like in Maryland, where I live, I went looking for arrowheads with a friend of mine, and he just kept picking up all these little stones and going, artifact, 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 and I'm just like, yeah, just what I want to find. I want to find arrowheads, But that's what they are. They're ancient bipolar percussion. That's the debitage. They took the flake, they left the core. And that's what we were finding were the cores all over the place. I've got 3 tools here at this point, 3 sharp edge tools. The pecking, grinding, bashing, bipolar. So that is what, I would recommend you guys trying here. We're not going to have any of this stuff out for you guys to work on. That's something you're going to have to practice on your own. The place where you can order stone is a place called neolithics.com. Yep. NEOLITHIC. There's Neolithic or Neolithics. Try both. I don't know if it's plural or singular.com. His name is Craig Ratzit. Very nice guy. He's the one who told me where this was. Vaguely. In the flint knapping world, everyone is very vague as to where the rocks are. And he's a really great guy. He sells all sorts of rocks. That's where I order my obsidian from. It's relatively cheap. $1 something a pound, $1.25 a pound, and it's about the same to ship it, about $1 to ship it. So you spend $50, you pay $100, and you've got. I literally, out of the first 50 pounds of rock that I had, I still have it, but it's all in spalls. I've used probably some of it because every time I've ever taught a class, I buy more, and my pile keeps getting bigger, and I keep collecting this crap. So. Another term that I left out was flake scar. When you remove a flake, there's a flake scar, okay? Another thing, when you remove a flake that appears, is a delta. A delta. You know, like a river delta? The delta is where the two flake scars form this little points here. Those are called deltas. Okay? The deltas have to be removed to continue going. Something you need to know about your platform. Okay? Now I'm going to get into working this. No, I'm good. I just don't want to contaminate the sand too much. Y'all are walking on it. Your platform, I mentioned that it can't be too sharp, right? If it's too sharp, it won't withstand that force. It also can't be too rounded or dull. Now, right now, I'm just abrading off all the thin edges, and I want to take you through a process of flake removal so you can see it. This area here, I'm going to consider that a square edge. Though it's rounded, that is pretty close to 90 degree as you can get without being 90 degrees. And I'm going to treat this like a square edge. I have a step fracture here. You can see that right here. There's a step fracture right there. That's not from me. I bought this from neolithics.com. Huh? This? You wish. You don't even know what this is. You don't even know where this rock is from. This is Pine Barrens bucket rock. So your platform. Now I'm just prepping my edge for flake removal. When you have a spall like this, and this is actually kind of already perfect to work practically other than this square edge. When you have a spall that has a really rounded side to it, you want to work your flat side first, okay? You don't want to really work, and this isn't the perfect example because there's a lot of the limestone on here, and I would actually take this off. But when you have a round, one side of your spall being very, concave, or convexed, and you have a very flat side, you want to make that flat side convex before you start running flakes across the already convex side. Because it's real easy to run flakes across that convex side, but until you make both sides convex or lenticular, that's another word, lens-shaped, basically it should look like this, is to be able to run flakes efficiently on both sides in any different angle. This practically is there. I've got this flat side right here with this kind of ridge. So I'm going to probably work this side first and this square edge first, just so that I can get to that point where it is a lens. Now, there's a couple techniques of doing this. I'm using this on my leg. Some people will hold it up like this. This is kind of freehand. I don't like to do that except for in certain situations. This gives you a little more control. When you're doing this, you want to have the breeze blowing across you, not into you or from behind you. You would like it so that any of the dust is going away from you. Best as possible that you can do that, you know. That zippering technique that I told you is also called alternate flaking, which I'm going to do down this edge. Now you can see the zigzag pattern. That's why I call it zippering. So basically I'm going to be zippering around this edge here and creating my... I'm going to come in from the other side now because it's getting a little tricky over there. Now, you don't start right into your 90s. Notice to get into this portion here, I'm starting over here. I'm starting practically on the opposite side, and I'm going to work into it. That way I've created a transition into my stone. A braid. Always want to braid. Braid. Now, when you're doing this, when you first start doing this, you're going to be thinking one flake at a time, but you want to get into the habit of, what is my action here? How's it going to affect my actions later? It's kind of like, you know, everyday life. How are my actions going to affect everything around me? And thinking 10, 15 flakes down the line. Taking care to abrade. Taking off any sharp areas. Braid. You see I'm constantly abrading.
What you making?
What?
What you making?
I am just showing you flake removal and bifacing basically, and how to remove a square edge. You can make whatever you want out of this at this point. I basically am not really trying to make anything, just showing you guys. Other than a
When you're hitting it, is it coming off from the bottom or the top?
It comes off from the bottom. You're striking and the force goes off the bottom. See, it's on the bottom. Percussion bulb, wave. Almost there. Not quite. A braid. And you guys can ask me any questions at this point. Would be the perfect time to do it.
You're trying to make it so that it's all like a similar angle along that edge.
Right. I'm removing that square edge and making a center line. I'm creating a center line across this edge, and it'll be zigzagging. Eventually, I will take it and make a continuous platform.
And you could use, instead of the antler piece, you could be using rocks right now.
Yes. Certain rocks in a certain technique. I wouldn't do this. It's too big.
Okay. You want to
I would use probably a big sandstone piece and do a glancing blow. You know. Too big. Maybe this one. See? It helps. But I'm sacrificing that for you guys. No. I'm making a biface. That's what I'm making. A preform or... Get rid of that. So my square edge is pretty much gone. I don't really see any more of it. It removes the sharp edges or the thin edges around the blade or around the piece so that it doesn't crumble under the percussion. Do you understand? Well, let's put it this way. I'll just show you. I'm trying to remove flakes. You see how thin this is? It's less than 90 degrees, but it's not really, well, that was bad, but usually it doesn't really send really good flakes. It just crumbles under the force. So I'm sending little micro flakes, but it's not going to carry when it's that thin. So this is, I can prepare my platform by taking little micro flakes off like this, or I can do it like this. It basically takes that thin edge away and that sharp edge away so that it gives you some meat to strike. So now you can see that that thin edge is gone. You could do it either way, but it basically, I can get rid of all these thin edges on these deltas and use that spot there now to hit it. If I didn't do that and I hit it, it would have just crumbled there, and it wouldn't have withstood the force. Also, that took off about an eighth of an inch of material. Now, if I have an eighth of an inch of material there, mentally, I think I'm going to hit it right where, when I removed it, before I removed it, I would have hit it where this edge is, and it would have crumbled. Now that I've removed it, I'm going to hit it an eighth of an inch up higher than where that is. Mentally, it helps you hit it in the right place. I could leave a thin edge on there and hit it up higher and then remove a flake, but it's going to be in the way. Mentally, it might screw with you. You know, it's just better to remove that thin edge. It also takes the sharpness off of it so that when you're hitting the rocks, it's not cutting you. Okay, so it's nice to abrade all the way around for that sheer purpose. Let's see. Now, if you have a situation like this, let me get my pad back on here. We've got that flat side and that bulbous side. I've got a couple different problems here. I got this big square edge and square hinge-like thing in here. There's a couple things you can do about that. And there's a lot of chalk on this, so this will be really weird to get rid of. See, it's just crumbling out underneath there. So, yeah.
Limestone.
It's limestone, yeah.
No. Look what flint. Get rid of it first.
Who? You know, what I like to do on this stuff, when it's real thick, is I like to peck it off. Because it's so soft. and it's not going to affect the rock usually, hopefully. And when it stops coming off, then I can see, and I'm just changing the angles, and it's coming off, but
What kind of stone was the white stone you worked before?
it's called, I don't know if I can say it right, Keokuk. It's from Arkansas, I think. It's part of a Burlington Chert formation. I think it's from Arkansas.
If you were making something with it, the flakes could be used as cutting edges or arrowheads.
Every one of these flakes is a tool. Every single one of them. I don't throw any flakes away. So please don't take any of my flakes. If you want a sample of a rock, you can ask me for it, but don't just help yourself, because you don't know what I might want to do with these. You can make jewelry points out of them. You can haft them. This is another perfect knife blade. I don't have any sandstone out here. It'd be great for like skinning and processing meat, but I wouldn't use this for carving a notch because it is too thin. This? Yeah, I could make an axe or an adze out of this. I could make a hoe out of it. I could do whatever at this point, make a big spear point. I could actually break it in half and make a couple arrowheads. Addle point, whatever you can. It depends. That's why I'm not going to say I'm going to make a spear point out of this, because I could make a beautiful biface, take a flake, and it break in half, and then, okay, well, now I'm making 2 arrowheads. So I never could try to be as arrogant to say you're going to be, because you don't know what's in there. There could be an impurity in the stone, or a fissure or a healed part that's not completely healed, and or a crystal or a pocket of limestone that'll make the flake travel in a different way or a different direction. Now, your platform, it can't be too thick, it can't be too round either, or it won't take the percussion very well. It will bounce right off. Like here, that's really round. I wouldn't strike in this area on here, okay? I would strike over here because there isn't so much meat. But here, let me lift this up so I can spin it around and show everybody. That is really round. And that you will find on small pieces of, on spalls and on flakes when you're napping. So that is too stout of a platform. Right here is good. Right here is good. So does that make sense? You would never get a flake out of that. I mean, I'm not going to say never, but you're going to bust into it a bunch and cause a bunch of cones before something comes off, and then it's going to not be what you want. Your surface will be all screwed up and what have you. So in the process of reduction, I've been taught that there were 7 stages of production or reduction, and this is stage 1, is removing off the spall. 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 is basically reducing and changing the angles from steeper to narrower until you have a finished point, which would be stage 7. It's notched and finished, or whatever it is, your point. In that process, you constantly want to abrade your edges, create a platform, and a bevel on the edge. The bevel is the angle where you're striking it. If you got a sharp point here on the edge, by abrading it, I'm sending micro flakes, and that causes there to be a little bit of a bevel there, which I would abrade before I strike it. This method doesn't change from spalling to pressure flaking, taking off the very fine sharpening flakes of your arrowheads or your knife blades or your spear points or whatever. It is all the same. The only thing that changes is the technique of removing the flake. Okay? That flake, when you get into the pressure flaking and the arrowhead making, is all just done. It's pressure instead of percussion. All right? But the angles are the same. The holding is the same, but it's done in your hand instead of on your leg. So, does that make sense? It's all the same. Same angle, same cone. It's just being pried off instead of hit off. Does that make sense? I just want to see about knocking a couple more spalls off of this for you guys, just so you get to see it a little bit more. If there's any more questions, now is still a great time to ask.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
Read the book, okay? Listen, if you can economic, think about the big piece, come on, think about first. Longer piece, think about first. Because you can always make a lot of chips from other use.
Right. Yeah, like I said, everything's a core until it's finished. Every flake that comes off of it can be used. So this here, I can knock arrowhead flakes off of it while I'm making an arrowhead out of it or a spear point out of it. So everything is usable. There's debitage, which I'm going to end up burying, but every flake is usable. The smaller, thinner flakes I've seen like this, you can collect these and half them into bone points and have razor sharp edges on them. Okay, you could glue them into bone points or antler tips and half those as arrowheads. There's all types of different uses with them. So yeah, I'm always trying to think of making another flake that's usable.
Basically saying putting a handle on it and securing it somehow.
What's that? Yes. When I say haft?
Yeah.
Yes. Putting it in some sort of a handle or holding device. So, ouch.
It still seems that you're making a lot of material which you maybe throw away or,
You make a lot of gravel.
yeah,
You do.
I thought,
That comes with skill. Yep. You can see that out of all the flakes that I've removed, there's very little of this compared to the amount of usable spalls. Like when I reduce this down, I will have probably a pile of unusable, I'm not going to say unusable, but something that I'm not going to probably use compared to the 50 or 60 that make a bigger pile of these. So there's a little bit of waste, and that depends on your skill. Like I said, the first 25 pounds of obsidian that I napped, there was nothing there. The first one I hit shattered into a million pieces. Okay? And I was just like, it's not supposed to do that. Must have been the rock. So, yeah, there is waste. You can't avoid that. There is byproduct. And the only thing you can do is, like I said, use them. Use them. Practice. What Callahan taught me was save every single flake. This is where you learn notching. This is where you learn eccentrics. This is where you learn, all the different things that you want to do on a finished point, but don't want to learn it on the finished point and don't want to ruin that finished point. This is what he will teach you on. He's not going to give you this. He says learn on the smallest piece and work up to the bigger pieces, because then you're preserving your resources. No, that's not in this class. This class is designed for basic survival skill to get a sharp edge. I don't want to confuse you with notching. It's a whole nother realm of existence in the flint knapping world. But I can tell you this, it's no different than what I'm doing here. Okay? Same angles, same everything. That's a whole nother realm as well. If you have some, I didn't bring any for you guys. I don't go to Georgia for anyone but me. So, but like I said, you can do the bipolar percussion, and you can try and make arrowheads out of them if you want. You can make your sharp edges, carve your notches out. Learn how to use that first. That's what's most important, not making an arrowhead right now. Most important is having a sharp edge that you can make your fireboard and butcher that animal that you get, like a squirrel or whatever, that you catch with your traps. You can, you can either peel it off with your fingers or have a stone tool to slice it off. You can tear the meat apart or you can cut it up nice. That's going to depend on you. Nope, it definitely does not. Sometimes they actually break a little better when they're wet. This stuff surely does.
What about a stone that's been in water for a long time?
That's fine. This stuff was underwater. This stuff was soaking wet. Like you'd hit it and water would come out of it.
Sometimes the stone you have hit with fire will come out.
Oh, bad, bad, bad. Did you see that? I hit it way up here. I wanted to hit it here. Bad. Oh, man, look at that. Bad, bad. There's a cone in there. I mean, I just created another one of these for you guys. Maybe I can get to it.
Are those waves running through the hammerstone that just split in half? Or is that from the percussion, or is that always in the rock?
Probably a little bit of both. You can see that there's layers in there, and it looks like it's split on layers. Yeah. Yeah, eventually your hammerstones go to the ground again in smaller pieces. That's why you have buckets of them. All right. I'll work my way. So now what happened is that cone is right here that I threw into it from previous, and I'm going to try and remove something off of it this way, and it's probably really going to screw me up because the cone is in there. God, this was my favorite hammerstone, too. You guys made me ruin it. Don't worry, I already did. Nah, all my fault. Look, see, there's what that cone did. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? That cone that I hit, I did this. Oh, here it is. I hit it there. That shock wave went in there, and there was that. You can see there's fissure in there. There's the crack right here coming through it. But I still have two pieces. But isn't that stuff gorgeous? This stuff is beautiful. It's just fascinating. I actually have. I didn't even bring it. Down in Florida, I collected this stuff on my way to the Florida Standard. We were breaking it up, and in the process of breaking it up, a sand dollar fossil came out. A perfect sand dollar fossil. And it's in this rock like this big. So I was like, huh. So now that rock's in my front yard, and it's a perfect nice rock. And I wasn't going to break into it because I wanted to keep this fossil in there. And then I went to another place and did a demonstration and found another one, but I actually got the whole thing, and it's in two halves, and you can put it together, and it is just amazing the things you can find in here. I've got arrowheads that have different fossils in them, where they're preserved, like really small little shells and I don't know what you call them, crustaceans and things, and it's just amazing what you find in this stuff. The patterns, it's just, it's addicting. I'm addicted to rock. That's why I live in D.C. No, I can still use it. Yeah. What when I sent that cone in, that it made, instead of this coming off as one big flake, I should have had a spall this big, which I could have got a nice blade or spear point out of, but now I have two arrowheads, which that's fine. I'm happy. I'm going to use it or sell it to one of my friends. No.
Bigger ones hard
Yes, bigger ones are very hard to make, and that's what you want. So, is there any more questions on this? Because I've pretty much covered everything I can think of.
If you want to get some dirt time on just any old rock, like granite, where I live,
Where do you live?
New Hampshire area, Massachusetts.
What's up there? Rhyolite runs all the way up to Maine. There's probably quartzite up around that area too. Maybe not where you are, but you can probably find it. But dirt time, just try to find any rock. Someone just asked me if there's, flint or chert in creek beds. Depending on where you live, you're going to find, Kentucky and Texas and Georgia. In Florida, there's agatized coral. Pennsylvania, there's jasper. Here in Jersey, there's quartzite and jasper. There's actually a flint in Jersey. There's rhyolite that runs through Jersey. There's argillite that runs through Jersey. They're all nappable stones. They're all local native stones that people used for thousands of years, and they're all nappable. It's just your technique and the proper tools. The harder stones, like the quartzites and things, you're going to want to have big wooden billets. I'm talking big wooden billet, like twice as long as this, about the same thickness, with a little handle on them so that you can hold them. Something with some weight. That stuff needs the softness of the wood to bite into it, to remove it, but the weight. This kind of bounces off. You can still use it on there, but at a certain point you can't use antler on that anymore. You need to use wood. Quartz? Quartz like in the crystals? Quartzite. That's what basically this stuff is, like a form of quartzite. It's not a very pure form. Yes. I think it's quartzite. Quartz, pure quartz, is like a crystal. Quartzite is like really small crystals, I think. I don't know. I'm not a geologist, but I think that's what it is. Quartzite is a structure of many small crystalline structure, whereas quartz itself is the big formations of crystals. I think you can. I haven't done it. I don't think I would ever want to ruin a beautiful crystal, but I think you can flint nap that stuff. I don't see why not. Yeah, shale and things like that, and granite. Yeah, that stuff, it doesn't carry a flake very well. You can still knock flakes off of that stuff, but it's all rough and just, you're not going to make something really serviceable out of it. You can get a sharp edge. You can get your edges that you're looking for carving notches and things like that, but you're not going to be able to make a spear point or something like that out of it. Right, yeah, people have actually made shale knives and spears out of shale. Slate, I'm sorry. Slate I'm thinking of, not shale. Shale's like really flaky.
Yeah, you can flake it really.
Right. No, yeah, shale you wouldn't use, but slate you can make and grind. That would be something you would grind into a shape. You wouldn't nap that.
How much longer would a harder keep an edge than a softer stone?
I don't know. Probably a lot longer. Like soapstone dulls really easy compared to this stuff. But my edges, I've got a knife over there that I've been using for 7 years. That I've only retouched it whenever I've broken the tip off of it. It's a little antler knife sitting over there, antler handled, small little blade like that big. I've used that on, 50 arrows probably, and cutting sinew out of deer and processing meat. And I've done everything you can imagine with it, put it under serious stress and what have you, and I've never retouched it, except for when the tip broke off.
When you're scraping flesh or whatnot, if you use a stone tool, will that dull it pretty quick?
You can, yeah. If you, everything does dull out, with use. How quickly? I couldn't tell you. I've always used bone. If I've done hides primitively, I've used bone tools. I've never really used stone in the processing. I just haven't done that yet. And the bone dulled pretty quick, and I had to resharpen that all the time.
Okay.
How do you know when to grind the stone and when to nap it?
Experience. Just tooling around. You can grind any stone, okay? English flint, the Danish daggers, those are preformed. then they're ground down to a shape, and then they're final flaked. Okay? And in the Danish dagger world, there was the master napper who knew the knowledge of the flaking patterns and making the handles and things like that. And all of his apprentices, they did all the grinding. You know, they didn't know that, and that knowledge was power back then. Those people were held as, you know, valuable to the noble people because everyone wanted these daggers, and only a few people knew how to do it. And they would sit out in the middle of town and nap these things out and then go away and grind them so that no one knew what they were doing, you know. And there's a whole book on that whole, you know, knowledge and how it was held a secret for so long. But,
could you nap glass, like broken bottles? And
yep. Yes, you sure can.
How
What
do you
about plate
sharpen?
glass or something like that?
What's that?
It's got to be what? Just straight silicone, right? None of this tempered or anything like that?
You're not having a good day.
Say that again?
What type of glass? Or
Any
not
type of
to
glass.
use? Any?
Any. Plate glass, TV glass.
Not tempered glass though.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never messed with tempered glass. You wouldn't want to use
Safety because it's designed to shatter.
to shatter instead of flake. So yeah, tempered glass. I never even thought about that because I've used plate glass usually, or TV screen you can use, which flake's kind of weird, but it works. But plate glass and bottle bottoms, you can use that stuff. And you can find that stuff anywhere. Slag glass, if you live anywhere near where there's a glass plant, you can get slag glass. That stuff is like obsidian. It's a little more flaky, a little less consistent. It's got air bubbles and stuff in it, but it works.
Do you sharpen a stone knife the same way you would a steel knife or a regular?
No.
How do you sharpen?
That's with the pressure flaking and stuff. Which is basically what, a micro form of this flake removal. So now that edge right there would be too sharp for me to remove a flake off of, so I would have to get rid of that, abrade it. And I actually wouldn't even run a flake there. I would have to adjust this a little bit because that's going to hinder my success. So that's what I got for you guys. Any more questions? Ouch.
How far in are you aiming on that strike?
What do you mean?
When you get down with your hammerstone, how far in on that large?
From the edge?
Yeah.
It depends on the flakes you want to remove. If I hit it really close to the very edge of the platform, it's going to be a little itty bitty flake. If I hit it, for instance, when I removed this and this, I hit these about an inch and a half up from the edge of the stone. And that, again, I mentioned earlier, is going to vary depending on the size of the stone. Like this here, I'm not hitting it up here, I'm not hitting it a half inch off the edge. I'm hitting it a millimeter off the edge, okay? Because I'm trying to remove small, long flakes off of here, not big, fat, chunky flakes like I am here, okay? Here I'm trying to get the biggest flake possible. If I could, I would want to run a flake, from point A to in here somewhere. I want something large and to use out of that, and then work it down to the size that I want. Or if I'm just looking for arrowheads, then I'm going to make these. But you can see there's my percussion strike. There's where my edge was. That's, almost an inch off. And that's the flake I removed. All right? Yeah.
Are there any particular precautions you have to make or use when using like stone blades and stuff like that? Any things you should avoid doing with them?
Dropping them. That's pretty much it. You don't want to, when you've got a nice stone point, the one thing that you don't want is to be rubbing the edges of it because that's constantly dulling it. You don't want to be handing them to people and them doing that, okay? A lot of people have the habit, wow, that's pretty sharp. Well, every time they do it, it does dull it a little bit. But other than that, you can do whatever you want with them. You don't want to put them under any stress like sideways because they could snap in half. But other than that, do whatever you can. I put things to the test, and I've Like I said, I put that one little knife under a lot of pressure and stress, and it's lasted me forever. 7 years. Yeah.
About the Hertzian cone, how do you ensure you'll get that 100-degree cone?
By hitting the rock.
Any rock, no matter what part of it you hit, it seems.
There's going to be a cone in there. Whether it removes a flake or not, that's a whole different story. You're not making a cone, you're making an edge of a cone. You're removing a flake as the edge of the cone. It's a side of that whole cone. You're using one side of it.
So any rock you hit, any part of it, there'll be a pressure wave at 100 degrees tangential to that angle.
Correct. Yep. That's how rock breaks.
But I would think different types of rock would produce different angles.
The angle changes with your percussion. If you're using stone, rock, or antler, the angle changes a little bit, but you're not going to know the difference. Unless you're sitting there with your protractor or a laser, which.
Does that cone concept go beyond rock too, like hitting like things or like that, the way the energy spreads?
I have no idea. I know it works in rocks. I imagine that's how force goes. Like I said, it works with bullets and flesh.
Yeah,
Because when you hit wood, it doesn't seem to do that.
What's that?
Is the lime reusable, the limestone that you powder off?
I don't know. Probably.
For cement?
Probably. Probably for gardening and everything like that. I don't know.
When you cut yourself, is there any tricks you have to make yourself coagulate?
No. I'll tell you what, though, if you cut yourself with the stone tool, it heals a lot quicker and cleaner than if you cut yourself with a metal tool.
Why is that?
It's just a smoother cut. It's sharper than, well, especially obsidian. Obsidian scars heal a lot cleaner than surgical steel. It's literally 1,000 times or 500 times sharper than surgical steel when held under a microscope. It's got a sharper edge. It's not as jagged.
They say the sharper it cuts, the faster it is.
The sharper the blade, the cleaner the cut, the faster it heals.
But it bleeds longer.
Yeah, it does bleed a little longer.